Welcome back. It is always a good day. When I wake up, I give thanks, take a little mindful smell around the neighborhood with my puppy. And I know that today is a day that I am privileged to introduce you to another really cool woman. You're going to love meeting Liz, but let me get just a little bit of housekeeping out of the way. Boy, it's been so much fun. I went on the back end of the podcast today. These are my top cities, no particular order. Minneapolis, Minnesota, you continue to support the Next Room. Thank you. Seattle, Washington, big. All of a sudden, Seattle came to the party. St. Louis, Missouri, Colorado Springs, Colorado, beautiful part of our gorgeous United States. Santa Barbara, love you guys. You guys are always showing up for me. St. Clair Shores, Michigan, which I have a big fondness for Michigan, being a Michigan girl. Copenhagen, Denmark. I don't know what's happening, but the last few weeks, the downloads in Copenhagen have been crazy cool. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Sydney, Melbourne, Australia, always showing up. And let's see what else. Houston, Texas. And I think that's it. Those were my top cities. Anyway, really appreciate it. Thanks for the follows. Thank you for Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. Mom Died Last Night. That is the name of the book by Liz Peterson. Liz found me to begin with. I don't know how it all happened, but I got an email from her. And she invited me on her podcast called Raise the Vibe with Liz. We had a very spirited conversation. And it's kind of cool because Liz and I have a lot of symmetry. We both have written books. This was Liz. For you YouTube people right now, you can see it. All my sticky notes here because I had fun writing little notes. It's my shared death experience. So we're going to find out all about Constance Ann Eason, which is Miss Connie, which is Liz's mom. So Liz, welcome to the Next Room.
Thank you so much, Jane. I love that introduction. And I've really been feeling like since I read your book just recently and finished it while I was camping over the last couple of days, I really feel like our moms are here present with us for this interview. So it's really fun to have this exchange with you. Thank you so much for being on my podcast, Raise the Vibe with Liz. I really adored your conversation. I know my listeners did too. Shout out to Seattle. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's right. You're from the Pacific Northwest, aren't you?
I am, yes.
Very cool. Well, that's great. Yeah, I really enjoyed reading your book too, and the just one piece of symmetry. And yes, our moms are here. That's so obvious. You, as you're writing this book, so your mother passes away, she's 85, and you immediately start to feel her presence. So let's start there with where you felt like your mom, Connie, Miss Connie, was communicating with you.
I really feel like mom was stepping forward, as you said, immediately after she passed away. I spent some time with her in the hospital and went out to my car. My sister had left with my niece, and I'm sitting there numb, in shock, didn't know what to do. I have a half sister in London, and out of the blue, she messages me. She never messages me in the middle of the night because she is aware of the time difference. And I just think that mom in spirit had urged her to go ahead and text me. I ended up sitting there for an hour with my sister on the phone, having a beautiful conversation with her. You know, having that connection was really important to me. As I'm driving home from the hospital, I start getting mental pictures. I'm clairvoyant. So I get messages via pictures and little mini movies. I'm seeing my mom in my mind, not as she was in her death state, but a little bit younger with longer hair, looking fresh and vibrant and just saying hello. I can see her in my mind right now, like again, saying hello. I was starting to get messages from her, also seeing something that she had sent me that she saw on Facebook several months prior of memorial glass blown ornaments that she would have liked made with her ashes. And I'm pulling up to a stoplight. I'm getting chills right now. I'm pulling up to a stoplight and I'm seeing the mental picture of this glass blown ornament picture that my mom had sent me. And I knew that she was with me. It continued on and on and on all the way home that night.
You
And
know
then
what's really cool is that you bring up the glass blown ornament, because I have right here the little word neat written on a note. And my mom, obviously our moms were kind of the same generation. My mother was a little bit older, but that was her word, my mom's word too. Whenever she would read an article and something in the newspaper, she'd clip it out and send it to me, and she'd say, I think this is neat. So I love that your mom did that. Did you take her ashes and turn them into, because I know Seattle's like the blown glass capital of the world. Did you do something with your mom's ashes?
I did. I ended up finding one actually online, and I had it created in the form of a hummingbird, and it's in
Oh,
the back room in the window, you know, with some of her figurines on the shelf. And it really is lovely. And her favorite color, blue, of course.
that is so great. I love a good hummingbird too. So let's talk about the flickering lights. You actually had a conversation with your mom and take it from there.
This was a fantastical experience for myself and my youngest son, who is now 16. He was 15 at the time. It's been a year and a half now. And we're laying there in bed, both reading. He's on his phone reading. I'm reading a book, I believe. And all of a sudden, I notice a flicker of the light, the bedside light lamp. And I notice, and I'm like, that's interesting. And I just pause and wait. And then in my mind, I'm like, Mom, because our loved ones, not only can they hear us when we're speaking out loud, but they can hear us when we're speaking in our mind, like telepathy. So I'm like, Mom, is that you? And again, it flickers. And this time my son notices. And my youngest and I had a full conversation, light going on, light going off several times, flickering to different questions. It was an amazing experience. I had heard about this from, reading books or watching documentaries or all of the ghost shows that I love to watch, because that's what I'm drawn to, having my mediumship skills come back online later in life. It was just such a neat, I'm going to use my mom's word, neat experience, to have that communication. It continued on with the lamp that is now in the corner of this room here in my new place, but was next to the couch and occasionally would flicker. Also, my printer would also cycle at 3 a.m. or when I go to bed. And it's these ways that spirit on the other side can communicate via electronics, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they do, don't they?
Yes.
There's all kinds of cool little things that happen. Tell me about, I think it's on page 19. Tell me the significance of eagles and seeing eagles. What is the significance with that as far as a sign connected to Constance or Miss Connie, your mom?
Eagles to me means strength. And it's funny, I drew the tarot card strength this morning. So I think it's fantastic that you're bringing up eagles, and they are very much a sign of strength for me. I'd always seen them around, but they more fully came into my life in the beginning of 2018 when my ex partner and I split our 20-year marriage. And I actually had one fly directly over my house and start nesting in the backyard in the forest, which was amazing. A couple days before Mom passed away, I saw an eagle flying over the highway. It was also joined by a red-tailed hawk. They were flying in circles over top. And I knew it's like my sign that I am supported. I also talk about in the book how I'm reflecting after Mom passed, how often I had seen eagles. And in very strange ways, I'm driving to my son's house across the island, and there's an eagle leading me down the road through Vashon. Coming home another afternoon, an eagle flies right in front of my windshield from right to left, which was just amazing. And I think it's just the universe, source, spirit, God, those winks from the other side, those God winks that we get, like, we are with you, you are supported, here's how we're showing you this animal, this being, this bird means something to you. So this is the way that we're going to get the message to you to let you know that you are not alone, that you are supported by on the other side, and that you do have the strength in order to go through these difficult times in your life. That really was a sign for me.
Yeah, it's hard, that grief part of, missing someone directly tied to the amount of love that you shared with your mom. And I was just having this conversation earlier on another show about how grief doesn't go away. We just learn to kind of live with it. It becomes part of us. I don't believe it can be, chucked away and put on a shelf. I think that it changes and morphs over time. You also had a point in the book where you were just kind of like out of it. I would call it grief brain. Talk to me about that and what was going on. It's almost like you said you were like almost sleepwalking through part of your life.
I really was. That first part after mom died, I've heard it called acute grief. And I love that word because it really was acute for me. I was numb. I was disoriented. I couldn't track time. It felt like shock. I was walking around my house in a daze, not knowing what to do. I have since learned that is the acute stage. That is that initial part of grief, no matter what your experience is. And I know with the passing of someone so close to us, like a mother and a father, we really can't emotionally prepare for that situation, right? And I've said in the past, like, I was not prepared for the loss of my mother. I felt ill-informed around this type of grief. I had experienced grief in my past, but this type of grief from losing my mother was unlike any other grief I had ever experienced. And let's face it, in our times these days, since, COVID and everything else that's happened, we've all experienced a lot of grief from the loss of jobs and friends and family members. And we can't prepare for those either, but it's not the depth, I would say, that I experienced with the loss of my mother. And I think that it really sent me into a tailspin. I was really walking around my house, forgetting to heat up my tea and trying to remind myself that I needed to take care of the dogs and that I needed to nourish myself, and reflecting over what was in my house, like that I had that was there when I needed it. And then following through on, okay, I need to take care of myself. How about this tea? Reheat the tea, jot down what I'm feeling right now. Do I want a hot bath? Do I want to fix myself a nourishing bowl of soup? Do I need to step outside for a second? What is it that I need to do for myself right now in this moment, in this grief? And how do I take care of myself in this new situation that I find myself in?
Yeah.
This severe loss.
I'm glad we're talking about this because, grief just manifests in such an interesting way and differently for everyone involved, depending on what it is they are grieving. I think really the takeaway is to be gentle with yourself, and it's so hard because, you forget to eat. You forget to turn lights off. You forget to care for your, four-legged family members. It's a tough one. My guest is Liz Peterson. She has Raise the Vibe with Liz, really fun, spirited podcast. She's also the author of Mom Died Last Night. And Liz, also, you have a website called Liz Healing Touch. Let's pivot right now and let's talk about your alternative holistic health side of what you do, because I think it's great and I'm fascinated with natural healing. And I really believe that we have the ability to heal ourselves. Let's talk about what you do and how you got into this holistic health service.
Thanks, Jane. I do want to say that lizshealingtouch.com has now been changed into raisethevibewithliz.com.
Oh, okay.
An umbrella for all the work that I do, the podcast, my healing work.
Okay.
my spiritual work and my psychic readings, and everybody can find all the information about that. But cycling back to your question, I ended up getting into a car accident when I was 21 years old and having to move from California back home to Maryland. And in California, I was seeking out a fashion industry career. This car accident completely flipped that over into moving back home and sort of being in stagnation. So I was searching. I found myself searching. I found that after the car accident, my natural gifts kind of came more online. I was having more psychic dreams. I was having more premonitions. The work that I was doing on myself led to massage therapy. My instructor at Baltimore School of Massage was also a polarity therapy instructor, which is very much a form of energy work that I do today. She was also a shaman. I'm seeing, oh, sorry, a hummingbird just flew by the window. That's so fun. All the little
Hi,
winks
Mom.
you get, right? Hi, Mom, as we're doing the interview. Okay, so she was into shamanism. So I actually finished the first part of the massage training and ended up getting into energy work instead. When I
Okay.
left Maryland, when I was 25, I came to Washington State and I started having anxiety and panic attacks about 3 months after I got married. And me being who I am, I go to a psychic, and it is one of those days where they're having multiple psychics in, a room, and you can choose whoever. And this one woman just happened to be open, and I was telling her what I was experiencing. She goes, mumbled under her breath something about a spiritual awakening, and gave me a telephone number of a woman who ran a 4-year program. She had gone to Barbara Brennan's Healing Institute in New York. She was a psychotherapist. She was the only one given permission to teach Barbara Brennan's work on the West Coast. So I ended up in her 4-year program, very much doing energy work. I got my Reiki Master certification there. We did shadow work. We did childhood wounding and various other things. So that was really the jumping off point for my life and doing this healing work. Now, when I was raising my children for that 13 years before I went back to work, I very much, did the healing work with my family and friends, and used it really to, I'm going to say, thrive during my marriage and thrive while I was raising 4 to 6 kids. And then after my divorce, started up my practice more fully on Vashon. And that led to doing my radio show, which turned into my podcast during lockdown. And here I am now on your show after writing a book, and I'm doing psychic readings and spiritual coaching, and also still doing my energy work sessions, which start off with about 30 minutes of spiritual coaching. And then we transfer to the table, and I work on the aura and the chakras and past lives and anything that intuitively comes up during the session. I really do love my work. It's fantastic.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just had pulled the website from the back of the book. I should have looked further. So it's raisethevibewithliz.com. Great
Yes,
name, by
thank
the
you.
way. The whole thing is just great. So shadow work. Explain.
So shadow work is looking at your inner self. It's how we were programmed when we were younger by our parents, our caregivers, our pastors, our teachers, and it's how we have learned to cope with life. And these things go on autopilot. So then when we enter our 20s and our 30s, we start realizing, okay, when X happens, I react by doing Y. So it's a journey of self-reflecting. Okay, I got triggered when this person did this. How interesting. Now, how can I trace that trigger back to its origin? Where is its origin? Why did I create that in my life? And how does it function now in my life? And if it's negatively affecting me at this time in my life, how can I switch that off and step in to maybe responding instead of reacting next time, or totally shifting it into, let's say I have an abandonment wound and it gets triggered every time somebody, I don't know, leaves for work. I'm going to be really general here. Okay. How can I trace that back to, oh, mom and dad used to leave for work. What did that look like for me? I felt abandoned as a child. I was a latchkey kid, yada, 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 whatever the story is that you have in your past. And then why do I go into fear around being that latchkey kid? Why did I bring it into this moment in time as an adult? And how can I tell my adult self, and also my inner child, hey, you're safe now. We're fine. That person isn't leaving you just because they're going to work. And it's really working with our psyche and sort of reprogramming, creating new neural pathways. So we're not going into fear every time we feel our inner child feels like it's being abandoned in our adult life.
Right. It sounds like, I mean, I didn't know there was a term for shadow work. It sounds like self-reflection. It sounds like, elevating yourself, which I literally do or work on daily. Can you do this on your own? Do you need someone to guide you through it? Like how, it sounds to me like it's something that you naturally, as we grow into higher consciousness, we would work on ourselves, sort of like, oh, I didn't behave properly there. Got to examine why. Oh, I'm acting like baby Jane, not grown-up Jane. Okay, going to stop doing that because it's not healthy, right?
100%.
Okay.
And you said it perfectly. And it's all about awareness, because without awareness, we can't create change.
Right.
So acknowledging, oh, I just had this action. I didn't really appreciate this action. Why did I act this way? Okay, how can I choose to not act this way in the future? And it's very much that inner self work, that personal development work that we can do with ourselves, and that self-reflection.
Yeah. And isn't it funny when you have a reaction to something, you feel so crappy when you step into the not the highest intention or not the best behavior. You immediately feel horrible. It's like, why did I do that again? Why did I revert back to this wounded thing, well, that's very cool. So let's talk about your Reiki work too. Do you do distance Reiki, or do you prefer to have your clients, right there on the spot?
I can do both. So I can work in person and remotely just as well as in person. Reiki is a channeled energy that comes from above. It's an energy that we activate or turn on, so to speak, with symbols, and then the energy flows, and it really does not like to be manipulated. So as soon as you try to send it, say I'm working on someone, I say, go to their shoulder. Reiki will actually stop. So you set an intention, you turn it on. This is what we're going to be doing. Say I'm doing an online group Reiki session. So I activate the symbol, I set the intention that I'm working in group and that all of the, Reiki energy go to this group. And then I relax, surrender, and let the energy flow. And that's very different than the energy work that I use, where I'm pulling energy up through my body and channeling out my hands. And I actually can send it to the left and the right and up the body and have destinations for the energy. And they work very well hand in hand with each other, turning on the Reiki and then channeling the earth energy through my body to my client, wherever they need it. And very much like when I'm working on somebody, when I'm channeling the energy, it goes to where it needs to go anyway, even if I'm trying to direct it.
How does it feel personally, like when you are opening up to this Reiki energy? What happens physically to you? Like, how are you able to send someone healing distance-wise when you've never met them? Like, how does that, can you explain it, the function or the tactile situation, how it works out? Because I don't know.
Sure. So when I'm activating the Reiki energy, I get very peaceful. I feel my body opening up and expanding. It's like that sensation you get when your heart opens, where you have to take that deep breath and you can feel your heart opening. You can feel your energy system expanding. That's very much the sensation of the Reiki energy. When I am, let's see, the second part of the question was, what is that for the other person? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
how am I
Like
picturing?
you're opening up to this energy. And then what if, like, do you go, oh, I'm ready, I feel it? Or is there ever a time where it just doesn't connect? Like you obviously have to ask for this energy to come through you so that you can channel it to the human being, right?
I think the best answer would be, I've been doing this work for so long that it's like a moving meditation,
Oh, okay.
where I just, in my mind, it's welcoming it, Reiki on, as simple as that. And then it starts to flow. And then I just go into meditation if I'm doing group Reiki or distance Reiki, where I'm sending it to an individual. I picture who they are, I picture where they are, and then I surrender to the energy and its natural wisdom to go where it needs to go. Where with energy work, it's a activating the energy and doing a moving meditation where I'm spinning my chakras and I'm consciously intending for the energy to flow through me and to the person through the screen or across the United States or the world, and picturing where this energy is going. It's very much intention. I think intention really plays a role in the unseen forces of our lives, whether that be communicating with our loved ones or using Reiki energy or earth energy for healing work. It really is setting that intention. This is what it's going to be doing. This is where it's going to be going, and just releasing to the healing that will naturally happen from there.
Isn't it cool? I mean, it's 2023 and, probably 20, 30 years ago, this would not be a conversation we would be having. Certainly podcasts were just a glimmer. And that, I feel like humanity is opening up, and, the things that used to be weird or wackadoodle are completely understood and accepted, because we can't even possibly conceptualize how grand loving energy can be. I mean, we can try, but really, how do we really know? So what a fascinating business you have. That's really fun. How are your children with what you do? Like, how is it just normal? It's not going off to teach class, or it's not to show up at the hospital like a nurse would. It's not your typical career for a mom. How do your kids deal with it?
I have 4 boys ranging between 16 and 28, and
Wow.
I get different things at different ages. Sometimes I've heard, well, I don't know, Mom, I don't really believe in that. And then they get a glimmer and they're like, they start thinking about it. And then they get curious. My youngest is starting to come online with his gifts, and he's getting really curious and starting to ask more questions. So I think that's nice. My oldest son, who's 28, is very much in tune with his gifts and knows how they show up, and he's been working with those. So it really just depends on where they are in their process, whether they're choosing to believe or choosing not to believe. And then what does that look like when it has opened up for them and they have gotten curious and then they do start asking questions. That's my favorite part, is seeing where they go from being the naysayer, oh, this isn't real, I don't know, Mom, this is kind of crazy, and hey, it is, it's kind of crazy, right? And
Right.
here we are. And then seeing it kind of coming online for them, and then going, maybe Mom's onto something here, and they start getting curious and asking more questions. I like that phase where they start, and yesterday in the car on the way back from Wenatchee Forest with my son and his friends, and he starts talking about it in the car and then asking me to possibly share with them a little bit about themselves and what he's heard from me, and asking me to open up and share with them, which I thought was really fun.
That's great. I love that. Do you ever send healing anonymously, or is it something that has to be asked for and delivered in that regard?
We can send it anonymously. And I think that that's something that I've definitely invited into my life during different circumstances, especially when life is difficult, or say we're not getting along with a family member or a friend, or we've been through a divorce or something like that. I think instead of choosing to be in, our anger or our frustration or something like that, we can just say, we can choose something different. We can say, no, I'm not going to choose to be in this emotion, in this feeling where I am only hurting myself right now. And then energetically, I 100% know as an energy healer that they are also receiving my energy, even though it's only playing out in my mind. So I choose to flip the switch, as I like to say, and send them light and love instead of sitting in whatever is in my mind, whatever has triggered my mind to go into something, and flip that into light and love. And we very much can, like when the ambulance goes by, for years I've been going prayers for the highest and best for everyone involved, sending them light. If a friend of mine over on the other side of the world or the country is experiencing something, sending them healing light, lighting a candle for them, for their experience, because I think that is universal prayer. It is bringing in spirit. It's bringing in the divine. We all have these healing teams at our access. So bring it in, send it to the people that we love, send it to the people that we're frustrated with, send it to the people that we don't like in the moment, instead of sending them, our frustrated thoughts or our angry thoughts. Send them light and love. And not only are you relieving yourself of this experience that you've actually put yourself in, because you are the only one experiencing it in your mind, right? But you're also pulling your energy back from whoever you're thinking about, because whenever we think of someone, we're sending our energy out to that person. And when we have that knowledge that that's what's happening, then we have responsibility, and it's our responsibility to pull our energy back, to switch that, to flip the switch, not only for ourselves, but for these people that end up crossing our minds, right? And send everybody light and love. I think that the more that we can do that in the world, then that's our little ripple that we're contributing to society, as opposed to everything else that has been going on in society, especially recently.
Yeah.
Right?
That deserves a big amen there, Liz. That's
Yes.
good. Back to your book, Mom Died Last Night. It's My Shared Death Experience by Liz Peterson. For you YouTube fans, there's a copy of it. And I'll put links. I'll put links to her website and the book and anything else that we may have touched on. Around page 69, you talked about signs fading. I just want to touch on that. Please explain what you mean by that.
I noticed in the beginning, I was getting signs from my mother repeatedly. The hummingbird, the thought, the song popping in my head, the dream. And then as my grief started to not be as acute, I noticed that I was still getting signs, but it wasn't as often as in when I was really in that acute stage of grief. Not that it goes away. Those signs don't go away. And if we do feel like we're not receiving signs or they're going away, we can ask for signs. But it just kind of dialed back a little bit, like the volume went down a little bit. Do I still see signs on a daily basis? Yes. Am I think, less in my grief now than I was then and busy with life now? Yes. And that plays a role as well. As we come out of those stages of grief and we get more involved, integrate ourselves back into life and we get busy again, I think we're not paying attention. So we're not seeing them as much, but they are there. I do get signs every day. I've gotten several before this call and during, right? It goes on. And then I do want to say again, if you feel like you're not getting signs, ask.
Mm,
You know, mom, dad, loved one, send me a sign. Let me know that you're here.
right. Yeah, I think that's a really good distinction too. It really is about uh they probably fade because we do get busy. We get busy with being human and, hanging out with our families and our loved ones and going to concerts or traveling or whatever it is. And so when you're actually active and mindful and living your day-to-day life, you're probably not looking for those, where I'm continually doing that because it is my world, right? My kids are like, oh boy, here she goes again. My kids are like, oh, mom, stop it, but it's good. It's who I am. So I,
I
I
love
do,
that.
I do love what you said, ask, because I tell people that all the time. They're like, how? I don't get signs. And I said, oh, you're getting them. You're just not aware of them. You're not in a receiving mode because you don't believe that you can actually receive one. So that's the big part of it. I think when people do get that sign, you have to say thank you, and then you have to understand that you are indeed receiving it. And it is belief once you receive, that's a big part of it.
Yes.
We get way too good at being human, Liz.
I
Well,
love that. And I like how you said thank you too. I was reflecting before our call how, I'm in Wenatchee Forest. I'm with my son and his friends, and my son loves to cliff jump. And we were at this one spot and he's jumping off the cliff and using the rope swing. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
right.
please, I'm sending up prayers. And then a butterfly goes by and I'm like, thank you, mom. So
Thank
I
you.
love that she said, it's that thank you, that
Yeah.
awareness. And I think the more that we can be grateful for these moments and enjoy these moments, the more these moments will come into our life too.
Beautifully said. Liz, such a pleasure to have you on the next room. Before I let you go, just talk to me about Miss Connie, because she's the one that inspired your book. She's the one that connected us. Um, I don't even know how it happened, but I love that energy of just meeting interesting people like yourself. Um, and it's just fun. And I just have a feeling that Connie and Betty had quite a hand in it. So take me out with a good, fun story about Miss Connie.
Oh, Miss Connie, mom, mother of 3 girls, me in the center. She had a dance studio in Cambridge, Maryland, and she loved it. She loved all the little kids. She loved putting on the shows every year, the dance recitals. She was an excellent seamstress. She made all of our wedding dresses. She made all the costumes for her dance school. At the end of her life, she worked for a doll hospital and created the most beautiful clothes for antique dolls. She adored us with all of her heart and always put us first. And I think that she's always smiling down from heaven and watching over us and her grandchildren. And I miss her. I love her. And I really appreciate all the ways that, she loved me and took care of me and was a part of my life and continues to be from the other side.
Beautiful. Miss Connie. I love that she worked for a doll hospital making clothes for little antique dolls. That is just so cool. Wow, what a cool lady. Thank you, Constance Ann Eason, for being here today. Thank you for raising such a powerful, empowered, beautiful woman like Liz and your other daughters. And it is cool. It's cool to have that connection with the other side. Whether or not people believe it, it doesn't really matter. It's really all about your personal experience and what you feel. So, Liz, great to be connected with you. It's Raise the Vibe with Liz. Go sign up to get her podcast right now. I know that you're listening to this one, so find Liz and then follow her podcast. If you want to read a great little book, it was almost like, for me, Liz, it was like reading a personal journal. That's what your book was. It was like, I was like, wow, this is like a journal. Like she just kept it next to her bed, picked it up, wrote it, and then she ended up publishing it. It's really great. So if you want a great little read and easy to read, I took it with me, by the way, because I You had sent me a digital copy, and I'm like, no, 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 I have to have a hard copy. So it traveled all the way to the Congo, by the way.
That's fantastic. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jane.
I read it on the plane, so it was wonderful. So thanks again for listening to The Next Room. Please download, share, let people know that you found this great podcast. Thank you for the book sales and the 5-star reviews. I'll tell you what, an independent author loves nothing more than opening up Amazon and seeing a 5-star review, especially if it's verified, because that means that they purchased the book, not just found it or had a hand-me-down somewhere, which is great because you don't write a book to get rich. You really don't. You write it because you have a story inside of you that needs to come out. And I know that well, and I bet you feel that way too, huh, Liz?
Yes, very much so. Thank you, Jane. And thank you for having me on the show. This has been so fun. It's been great to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
You're so very welcome. Thanks again for listening to The Next Room. If you can be anything on the planet, one request, be kind. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll talk to you next week.